Cambodia, sadly, is a country where children are trafficked to and from, and it's also the country where there's trafficking happening within the country as well. It's really hard to get a scope of how big the problem is, because it's a trade and business that's very secretive. There's a conspiracy of silence about what's happening, where it is.
When we look at the context for the sex trade or industry here in Cambodia, I think it's really important to look at the history because it is unique to all other countries. When the rice crops didn't grow as Pol Pot predicted, he needed to blame somebody, so he blamed the educated and he executed them. Of course, rice didn't grow any better when the educated were executed, and so the next step was the religious. The third step was families. So he separated the men from the women and the children from both of them. And he actually used the children to spy on their own parents and in many cases torture and execute their own families. Those children are the parents today.
After 1979, you can imagine, yeah? After Khmer Rouge time, how many Cambodian, the percentage of Cambodian is under the line of poverty. You can imagine 100%, you see.
Okay, so you kind of have this perfect storm going on. You've lost the educated, you've lost the religious, you've lost family, and then you add abject poverty to it, and you've got a perfect storm.
When I was young, my life was difficult because of the war in Cambodia. I couldn't study, and my family couldn't provide enough food to eat.
In my PhD research, which looked at Cambodian children's experiences and understandings of violence and abuse, we found that nearly 1 in 5 boys said that they had been sexually abused. And now these were boys that we interviewed between 12 and 15, and they said that they've been sexually abused by an adult. They've been touched on the genitals by an adult since they were 9. So this is, it just seems like this is a really big problem, but it's just a very hidden problem. People don't want to talk about it.
Girls or daughters, yeah, that who are victim of the sex abuse, the family don't want to speak it out. They want to keep it in internal family and suffer and nothing to reach the justice.
But it begins with the value that Cambodia places on women. And there's a Cambodian proverb that says,
girls are like a piece of cloth.
Men are gold. And so what it means is once you become soiled as a piece of cloth, you're worthless.
So, and that kind of gives a picture of girls as being very vulnerable.
Gold, it can be soiled and cleaned and refined. And so that's the thought process.
So on one side you have a picture of girls being totally vulnerable, and on the other side you have a picture of boys being totally resilient. And of course neither of those pictures are true, because boys are vulnerable and girls are resilient.
The karaoke bar is not a good place. It's such a difficult place to work at because no one cares about you. No one gives you true love.
It's hard for us to imagine the hopelessness that these girls have. When you combine just the culture they live in, how women are looked upon, and then you add to the fact that they've been serially raped for profit and treated like trash by men. And then the entire culture says they're absolutely no good.
I think for anybody who's being sexually exploited, there's always that promise that it could lead to something, a real relationship where they can get out of the poverty and the things that they're experiencing every day. Usually it doesn't come to anything. It just fades away. So there's this tantalizing hope for something more that never really materializes.
My husband divorced me. My father died, and I had no one to take care of my mother and my son or me. In my culture, there is a lot of pressure put on the women to take care of our family. I didn't know what to do. I was very sad, so I had to become a karaoke girl.
Shame is a really big factor. I think they're shameful for a number of different reasons. I think that a lot of them think that they can't change, that they're stuck to the way they are, that there's nothing they can do, that they've become addicted to this lifestyle and there's really nothing that they can do to change it.
To fight this crime, we need the cooperation, yeah, or the whole society.
When I was young, my life was difficult because of the war in Cambodia. There was not a lot of jobs and my family was very poor. I couldn't study and my family couldn't provide enough for all of us to eat. It was a very desperate time. At a young age, I decided to get married. Time was still hard with my husband. We had a boy together and he decided he didn't want to be married anymore, so he divorced me. This was such a tough time because my father had died and there was no one to take care of my mother and my son and me. I was sad and scared and felt like I was alone. One day, a friend who worked at the karaoke bar approached me. She asked me if I had any money and how I was providing for my family. She said if I needed money for food, I should work with her at the karaoke bar. They have salaries there and a house they could share with my family. At the time, I didn't know exactly what took place at the karaoke bars. I had never been inside one before. When I started, the manager was very mean. She would yell and shout at us to go sit with the customers. Because we worked for her, we would have to drink beers with the men and sit with them. And if we didn't want to, she would take our money away. When the customer came in, they would kiss me and touch me. I was really scared. It made me so sad to work there. I was doing all this awful work to help provide for my family. But when I would go to the market, people would look down on me because they know where I worked. One time I saw a customer there and he was telling his friends, you know, she is good with me. Like last night, I was good to her. I left right away. I was so embarrassed. I left the karaoke bar because I found the organization called Agape. They had worked there and provided salaries. This gave me a place to go and a place to study in the hair salon. Now I go to the salon every day. It is a safe place that teaches me a skill. Agape had provided a way out of the karaoke bar for me.
Yeah, I mean, this trip was focused and it was determined to be something that we were kind of going after and searching for some answers and searching for reason why certain things are happening around the world that we kind of don't really have that much knowledge about, and trying to figure out what it looks like to us as Americans, or to us as like just people who don't really get to see like that sort of pain and that sort of suffering as a lot of the children and the people in Southeast Asia are raised up in. And one day we went into a brothel one night, and it was probably around 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock at night. We walked into this upstairs through this little door. There's a kitchen at the bottom floor. You walk up these little tiny stairs, and you walk up to the second level, and the guy says, "Watch your head." And you look up, and the thing's only like 5 foot high. The ceiling's 5 foot high. Then you walk around that, and you walk up one more level, and we're like on the second or third floor, I guess. And there's this big empty room about 20 foot by 20 foot square, and there's all these wooden benches sitting around the room, and fluorescent lights in the ceiling, and we sit down, and the guy, this is a pimp, we go into this brothel, right? And so there's a pimp says, "Sit down," and I'll, wait a second. And we sit down, and we're looking at each other like, what's going on? And we're just wanting to see like how easy this is to access this sort of stuff. And it's scary, and what we're gonna encounter, I guess. And so we were just praying that, nothing, that we were putting ourselves in a bad situation. But right when he leaves the room, he like rings this buzzer, and then about 15 girls come in. Probably the youngest was probably 10 or 11, and the oldest was probably 17, maybe 18. And it's all run in, and they're all from Vietnam, and they're working in Cambodia, and they basically were trafficked from Vietnam to Cambodia. And these girls were just sitting on the benches looking at us and just waiting for us to pick them. And they all had on matching top and bottom pajamas. The pajamas, I guess, were used so that to allow easy access as far as getting clothes on and off for performing sex acts. And so it gives a sense of innocence to these girls to make them even look more, I guess, attractive to some of the customers who want to have this fantasy. But it's just was really sad when they come up, we look at the girls, and they'd kind of make eye contact with us, and we're just like sitting there, and the brothel owner at this point expects us to pick a girl out and to purchase her for a fee that we'll negotiate to use her for sex for the night, just for our kicks. It sucks because the next day it kind of sunk in, and it hit us what we saw. We obviously didn't barter or take any girls from the brothel, but we kind of just saw them, and we walked out, and we said we weren't interested tonight. So we left the brothel, and we just kind of quiet and dumbfounded by what we saw, like these 10, 11, 12-year-old girls just like there for like a minimal amount of money, probably $20 to $30 American money to have sex for an hour. And just knowing friends and family members and cousins and other people who have kids that are 10 to 12, 13-year-olds that are, imagining that in America, imagining that we were sitting there with somebody's child, that could be back in some other country, maybe Vietnam or Thailand, looking for them, wondering where their 12-year-old daughter is, and scared for their life. And we were just in shock and in awe by just the rawness of what we saw, and the children there, and the pain that we saw there was just, that you knew those children were in pain and wanting to be free and wanting to live outside of these walls and these dirty shanty town just buildings that they're stuck in. But I don't think they hardly get to see the light of day. They're sleeping during the day, so they can stay up all night and have sex with strangers. Just believe me, man. Once you see that, you don't want to think about anything else. So now we feel like we gotta find that hope. We gotta find the reason to not get down about it, but to jump back, and we can help and fight this problem.
Love 146 was started about 10 years ago by a group of guys who went to Chiang Mai to undercover. They went to an area where there were children that were being sold into sexual exploitation. There was a glass wall, and behind the glass wall there were children sitting there. The children were sitting, waiting to be picked. Most of the children were watching cartoons on the TV, The children each had a number on them, 143, 144, 145, 146 and so on. The little girl who was 146, she looked at them very defiantly, like, don't you dare pick me. And when this girl looked at them really defiantly, they took it as a personal challenge that they couldn't just go away and not do anything. So as a result of that, they started the organisation Love 146.
The healing process for a girl is really simple.
Someone told me about agape and the chance to get an education. Now I have a skill and a purpose.
We use trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which we have great faith in because of the success, but we also believe that there's a biblical basis for it, that it's a human operating system, that we all have this either for good or bad. Basically, that says what we think determines how we feel, which determines how we behave. And you can see that in our lives. My bride is a perfect example. She thought these earrings were too expensive, but she really wanted them. She thought on it long enough that her feeling became, I need them, and she went out and bought them, right? I mean, the simplified version, but shows really how our thoughts and feelings end up controlling what we do in the long run. You know, where we dwell. You could diets are another example. But these girls are coming in with that thought, I am trash. So now the idea is, how do we change that thinking to say, I do have value, okay, that I am lovable and worth receiving love. And that's really unconditional love.
And I think that's where we have to start with all of these groups, is we have to start with relationship, show them that we do love and respect them, and then we can go on from there.
So that unconditional love puts them in a position where they can truly benefit from education. Because prior to that, we'll use behavioral management techniques to have them in school and behave, but they're not really learning, you know. But once they get that idea, well, I do have value. Hey, I could do something with my life, then education becomes critical. And our goal is that every girl that comes here would leave functionally literate. Now you think, well, that's not a very big goal. But it's rare that we get a girl that's had any education at all. So when they come to us, they've never been in school. And imagine yourself as a 17-year-old girl that's never held a pencil or a crayon in your life. They're very excited about school.
I have a bright life, I have hope, and no one looks down on me anymore because I have a job.
We see that we have made a difference for the young generation. We provide them chance and opportunity to not face tragedy, but we still go ahead from scratch.
Work is far more than a financial deal. It's far more than just earning enough money in order to live. It's having a good employment does bring honor to a girl. Culturally, it brings honor. And really, more importantly, beyond that, that cultural responsibility to help provide for your family, when that is met, that brings honor. And again, that erases that stigma that they've been carrying is gone when they're able to do that. So it really, where we can transform through Christ, we can transform a girl's heart. But to transform her life, it takes more. It takes to be able to give them that type of opportunity to be seen with eyes of honor by the community that they're going to live in.
Now that I have hope, my son has hope, and his children will have a chance for a better future.
When we talk about that spiritual side, there needs to be forgiveness. If these girls can't forgive, it's like a cancer inside them. It's just going to grow, and they're not going to be able. It's not for their mom or their family or the pedophile or whoever else abused it. It's for themselves, that they need to get rid of that. And that's part of the spiritual component, saying you need to forgive, and understanding that we all need forgiveness as well.
I've just realised how fortunate I am to work with such passionate, really committed people, both foreigners and Khmer, who just have caught this passion and vision for wanting to change what's going on here. Now, in some ways you could think, well, it just seems so big and it seems so crazy that, what on earth can we do But I believe that it's significant for every person that we talk to, that every single person, it makes a difference, whether we're helping, working toward doing research and finding out more information so that we can advocate with the government or with UN, whether it's working with organisations that are working themselves with victims so that we can help them to do what they're doing better. All of those things, you know, they just feel like they're part of the tapestry of trying to help to develop and improve things. And in the end, we believe that light overcomes darkness and that the darkness will be pushed out. So that's our hope for the future.